This woman was in agony giving birth because the fetus was too large. The doctor recommended a cesarean section. Upon hearing this, the woman urgently told the doctor she absolutely could not have a C-section. If she got a scar on her stomach, she wouldn't be able to marry into a wealthy family later. The doctor said that without surgery, the baby would likely not survive. Unexpectedly, the woman told the doctor without hesitation, then just let the baby die. After all, she didn't even know who the child's father was. Her name was Yura. Born into poverty, she had vowed since childhood to become wealthy. As an adult, Yura fixated on marrying the rich second-generation heir Toksun to fulfill her dream. But Toksun, a notorious playboy, had long grown tired of her. He was scheming how to get rid of Yura. After dinner, Toksun deliberately claimed he had business to attend to and told Yura to go home alone. As Yura walked down an alley, she was ambushed by a group of thugs. They dragged her to a deserted spot and beat her mercilessly. The thugs warned Yura never to approach Toksun again. Then they slammed a stack of cash into her face. Yura was filled with rage and resentment. She swore she would take revenge someday. Soon after, Yura learned Toksun was getting married, but her anger flared when she learned the bride wasn't her. Just then, a wave of nausea hit her, and she vomited. After an examination, she was told she was 3 months pregnant. To avoid discovery, Yura chose to return to her rural hometown, but eventually, her older sister Sansu discovered her. By then, Yura was already 6 months pregnant. She begged her sister not to tell their father. Sansu was baffled when Yura revealed she didn't want to keep the baby. Yura explained she had previously gone to Toksun's house with poison, threatening to take her own life, but his entire family remained unmoved. Yura pleaded with her sister, who worked at a hospital, to find a way to terminate the pregnancy. Sansu told her the baby was already 6 months along and surgery was no longer possible. Yura declared she could never bear a child whose father was unknown. She intended to start anew and marry a wealthy man from a family far better off than Toksun's. After returning home, Yura began preparing the concoction according to the book's instructions. After much effort, she finally brewed the potion. She touched her belly and drank it without hesitation, but then she vomited it all back up. Yura sat on the floor, crying bitterly in frustration. Soon, 2 months passed. Yura told her sister she was going into premature labor. Sansu had no choice but to take Yura to the hospital, where he worked for delivery. The baby was too large for a natural birth, but Yura adamantly refused a C-section. The doctor could only helplessly assist with a natural delivery. Through Yura's agonizing persistence, she finally gave birth to the child. When Yura woke up, she asked her sister where the baby was. Sansu told her the baby had died. The doctor then explained that the difficult delivery made it highly unlikely Yura could conceive again. Hearing this, Yura felt utterly devastated, yet she refused to abandon her dream of marrying into wealth. She demanded her sister keep this secret at all costs. What Yura didn't know was that her child wasn't dead. Her sister had sent the baby to an orphanage. Soon after learning Sansu was to marry a wealthy heir, Yura schemed relentlessly to take her place. She devised a vicious plan to frame her sister. Approaching Yeonkyu, who had long harbored feelings for Sansu, she revealed Sansu was about to marry another man. She falsely claimed Sansu had always loved him, then urged him to forcefully take her away. Yeonkyu was torn inside. He didn't want to lose the woman he deeply loved, so Yeonkyu gathered his courage and forcibly carried Sansu into the room. Later, Yura heard sounds coming from inside the room. She knew her plan had succeeded. To keep the plan moving forward smoothly, she made up various excuses to delay her father Sang-hoon's return home. When Sang-hoon finally returned, he caught Yeonkyu frantically emerging from his daughter's room. Suddenly sensing something was terribly wrong, he rushed inside to witness the horrifying scene. Yeonkyu knelt on the floor, begging for forgiveness and promising to take responsibility. Enraged, Sang-hoon grabbed a wooden stick and beat Yeonkyu relentlessly. He screamed that Yeonkyu had ruined Sansu's life. Consumed by rage, he ultimately succumbed to a fatal heart attack. At her father's funeral, only Yura felt inner satisfaction. To achieve her desired outcome, no sacrifice was too great. Tae-jin, chairman of the Western Group, came to pay his respects, out of gratitude for Sang-hoon's kindness from years past. To repay this debt of gratitude, Sansu had been betrothed to Chairman Kim's son, Young Min. Since childhood, Tae-jin vowed before Sang-hoon's portrait to honor that original promise. Yura's objective this time was to tarnish her sister's reputation, so she could seize the opportunity to marry Young Min in her sister's place. After returning home from the funeral, the sisters were confronted by a group of debt collectors blocking their doorway. Their father was already deceased. The debt collectors intended to repossess the house and shop. Yeonkyu took on all the debts for Sansu's sake, and promised to settle everything within a month. The next day, Yura arrived at Atlantic Group. She was already fantasizing about a bright future. She then approached Chairman Kim, informing him that her sister already had someone she loved, and could no longer honor the promise to marry Young Min. Chairman Kim expressed understanding and said he wouldn't force the issue. Yura then recalled her father's final words on his deathbed, that she should fulfill the marriage promise in her sister's place. To her surprise, Chairman Kim unexpectedly agreed. This caught Yura off guard. Chairman Kim informed her he would bring Young Min for a meal in a few days. Yura was overjoyed upon hearing this. Yet upon returning home, she told her sister that Chairman Kim would visit soon and instructed her to simply go with him when he arrived. As long as they kept it secret, no one would ever know. Sansu declared she wouldn't deceive others. Yura immediately retorted, "If you refuse to go, then I'll marry him instead." She warned her sister never to reveal her past, or else she would face the consequences. Meanwhile, Yeon-kyu, desperate to repay debts, committed a robbery that accidentally resulted in 3 deaths. He was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in prison. Losing both his father and his lover plunged Sansu into profound grief. The next day, Taejin brought Young Min and Yura to the very spot where Sang-hoon had saved him years ago. He told Yura, "Without your father, there would be no me today, so from this day forward, treat me as your father." Thus, Yura married Young Min as she had wished. After marrying into the wealthy family, Yura found life wasn't as perfect as she'd imagined. Young Min had 2 older brothers. He showed no desire to compete for family power. This surprised Yura greatly. She had always believed her father-in-law was grooming Young Min as the heir. Yura even fantasized about becoming the matriarch of the conglomerate. Young Min had long seen through Yura's true motives for marrying him. He deeply disliked her. Yet one day, Yura spotted a massive opportunity. Young Min suddenly told her that Insu, a girlfriend he knew before their marriage, was pregnant. After hearing about my marriage, Insu planned to secretly terminate the pregnancy. To win Young Min's heart, Yura immediately refused. The next day, Yura secretly sought out Insu without Young Min's knowledge. She urged Insu to give birth to the child and hand it over to her. Yura expressed confidence that she could secure Young Min's position as the group's heir. "Then your son will become the next heir to the group," she promised. Insu curiously asked why Yura wouldn't bear the child herself. Yura confessed she was unable to conceive. "Therefore, I will dedicate myself entirely to raising your child," she declared. Finally, Yura reiterated to Insu, "Until your child becomes the heir, I'll ensure you live in comfort. Just stay out of my sight." Returning home, Yura informed Young Min of the arrangement. Young Min furiously demanded to know what she'd done to Insu. Yura replied she'd already told her father-in-law she was pregnant. "I'll raise that child as my own," she declared. That evening, Yura proactively told Young Min she would never have children again. She lied, claiming that if she gave birth, she couldn't raise that child as her own. To conceal her fake pregnancy from her father-in-law, Yura practiced every pregnant woman's movement daily with Insu. To avoid any slip-ups, she even had Insu, who was about to give birth, register at the hospital under her own name. Yura then told Young Min, "As long as you keep this secret, no one will ever find out." Thus, Yura achieved her goal and obtained the child. She understood that only with this child could she realize her true ambitions. Meanwhile, Sansu made the biggest decision of her life. She took Yura's daughter home to raise her, naming her Haejin. Time flew by, and 10 years passed. Haejin grew up, inheriting Yura's traits. Insu's son Minjae was raised by Yura to become an heir. Yura faithfully honored their agreement, paying Insu substantial living expenses on schedule. She repeatedly warned Insu never to meet Minjae, stating he would bear full responsibility for any consequences if he did. Yet, Insu secretly visited Minjae anyway. When Yura discovered this, she was furious. She resolved to eliminate Insu. That night, she sat quietly in her car, waiting for her chance. Soon after, Insu stumbled drunk down the street. Yura hesitated not a moment, slamming the accelerator and charging straight toward him. She then watched Insu collapse in a pool of blood. Utterly still, after confirming no one had seen, she hurriedly drove away. Back home, Yura gazed at the sleeping Minjae, convinced no one could ever take him away again. Yet what she never anticipated was that days later, Yura received a note left by a woman. Her heart skipped a beat. She immediately went to the scene of Insu's accident. She asked a shop attendant nearby what had become of the woman who'd been in the accident there. The attendant told her the woman must have died and was cremated that very night. This put Yura's mind at ease, but as she stepped outside, she bumped into someone. When she turned back to look, she froze in horror. Back home, Yura couldn't fathom how Insu could possibly be alive. Then she suddenly spotted a newspaper. It reported that Yeon-kyu had been resentenced to death with immediate execution. She was utterly heartbroken, convinced she had caused his death. Meanwhile, Haejin faced ostracism from classmates due to Yeon-kyu's news. They called her the daughter of a murderer. Returning home, Haejin confronted Sansu. "Why did you lie to me? Dad was clearly a murderer, yet you said he died in an accident. Now I'm humiliated at school and can't even attend classes." She stormed out immediately. Just then, Yura returned. This was her first visit in 10 years to see her sister. Yura thought of how she had caused Yeon-kyu's death and robbed her sister of happiness. She asked her sister if she harbored resentment toward her. Sansu told her it was the past and no longer needed to be brought up. That evening, as Yura prepared to leave, Sansu called her back. He hoped hoped she could meet Haejin. He told her that although Haejin was adopted from an orphanage, she was a good child. Yura paid little attention to this. Jin-suk hid alone in the courtyard, weeping bitterly. Thinking of Haejin's tragic life made her cry uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Haejin stood atop a seaside cliff in the pouring rain. Resentful of her fate, she took a step and plunged into the sea. When Samsu arrived at the scene, he found only Haejin's torn shoes left behind. He couldn't accept this reality. Time flew by, and 10 years passed. A female celebrity dragged a man away from pursuing fans. She asked him to be her boyfriend for 10 minutes. This actress, In-kan, was none other than Haejin grown up. The man was Min-jae. Upon learning this news, Yura was filled with regret. Min-jae had returned to the country less than a month ago. Now was precisely the time when the family was selecting an heir. Such negative publicity had emerged. She had to find that actress to confirm the truth of the matter. But what she didn't know was that this actress was her daughter, whom she had believed dead all those years ago. At this moment, neither of them knew of their connection to each other. To prevent Min-jae and In-kang's scandal from escalating, Yura had her lawyer threaten In-kang's company in advance. Yet, In-kan remained undaunted, vowing to fight back. Afterward, Yura was furious, humiliated. In-kan returned home and plotted revenge against Yura. She ordered her assistant to investigate Min-jae's background in detail. She intended to escalate the situation further. Returning home, Yura overheard a conversation in her father-in-law's room about the criteria for succession. Whoever could take over the shipbuilding industry would become the group's heir. Having sacrificed so much, Yura refused to let the position slip away. She immediately called Min-jae, who was traveling, demanding his immediate return. But like his father, Min-jae had no interest in the group's business. He quickly found an excuse to hang up. To avoid being at a disadvantage in the competition, Yura began manipulating her mother-in-law, urging her not to lend shares based on her sister-in-law's advice. Yet her mother-in-law remained unconcerned. Yura now sought every possible way to involve herself in the group's affairs. But young Min showed zero interest in the succession. Yura declared she would use every means to make Min-jae the heir. Young Min confronted Yura. How long would she keep Min-jae's identity hidden? Min-jae was grown now. It was time to reveal the truth about his birth mother. Yura insisted she would guard this secret forever. The next day, as young Min was leaving, he suddenly demanded Yura move his sleeping quarters from the study to the bedroom. Unexpectedly, Yura ignored him. For 20 years since their marriage, young Min had never touched his wife. He couldn't bear this any longer. Yura was overjoyed that her husband had finally broken the ice. She would now continue her quest to secure the heir position and fulfill her ambitions. That day, second sister-in-law Eri deliberately summoned Yura to her gallery. In Eri's eyes, Yura was nothing but an ignorant housewife. To her surprise, she spotted Toksung there. Both pretended it was their first meeting. Eri then led Yura into a room and revealed her purpose: to trick Yura into handing over her shares of the conglomerate. Yura, however, feigned complete ignorance. Seeing this, Eri bluntly stated, "Just entrust Min-jae and your shares to me for safekeeping." Yura smiled but gave no clear answer. Later, Yura met with Toksung. She asked him to help her once, promising he'd profit more. Finally, she threatened him with the fact she'd borne his child 20 years ago. Toksung agreed. Afterwards, Yura recalled how Toksung had hurt and humiliated her. This time, she would repay him in full. Yura visited her sister again. By chance, she saw a childhood photo of Haejin that looked exactly like her own childhood self. Samsu hurriedly explained that it was precisely because Haejin resembled her that they had adopted her. As Yura left, the more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. She suddenly demanded of her sister, "Is that child really dead?" Samsu's panicked expression gave everything away. Yura demanded why her sister had hidden the truth that the child was still alive. Watching her sister repeatedly apologize, Yura shouted, "If I'd known that child was alive, I never would have married into this wealthy family. I would have accepted my fate and raised that child properly. But why did you lie? How am I supposed to face that child now?" Heartbroken, Yura told her sister that Haejin had jumped into the sea and committed suicide 10 years ago. Hearing that Haejin was dead brought Yura a fleeting pang of sorrow. Yet she still blamed her sister for not revealing the truth sooner. This left Sansu deeply remorseful. As she left, Yura told her sister directly, "We must never see each other again." Back in the car, Yura flashed another sinister smile. Sansu had lost a lifetime of happiness because of Yura, and now bore the responsibility for Haejin's death. Yet she remained convinced Haejin was still alive, and vowed to find her at any cost. That day, after relentless inquiries, Samsu finally uncovered a lead on Haejin. She tracked down Haejin, who had changed her name to In-kan. In-kan recognized Sansu instantly, yet she showed no intention of acknowledging him. She hurriedly ordered her assistant to drive away. Samsu immediately tracked down Yura and revealed Haejin was still alive. Yura angrily retorted that even if found, it would be pointless. "That child won't be happy with me either." Finally, Yura warned her sister never to disturb her again. Watching Yura leave, Sansu could only hope she found happiness. That day, day, Yura accidentally tumbled down the stairs and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor informed Young Min, "Your wife miscarried due to this accident." Young Min was stunned. How could a woman who couldn't conceive suddenly become pregnant? The doctor explained such cases did occur. Don't tell your wife to spare her pain. Yura desperately wanted a child with Young Min to claim the family fortune. If Yura learned she'd been pregnant and miscarried, she'd never forgive Young Min. Yura's only hope now was Min-jae, yet she never imagined Min-jae would fall in love with her own biological daughter. 20 years ago, Yura ruthlessly ran over Min-jae's biological mother to possess him. She never knew In-soo had survived. All these years, she'd secretly stayed by Min-jae's side. Though Min-jae didn't know In-soo was his real mother, whenever he felt down, he'd visit her coffee shop for a drink. In-soo's genuine care for Min-jae made him sincerely wish she were his mother. For Min-jae was merely a pawn in Yura's quest for ambition, devoid of any tender maternal love. Unexpectedly, Yura witnessed In-soo and Min-jae meeting. This ignited a new wave of furious rage within her. The very next day, she stormed into the coffee shop, confronted In-soo, and exchanged harsh words. In-soo was momentarily flustered. Yura warned In-soo to honor their original agreement and never meet Min-jae again. In-soo pleaded with Yura for a few months to spend with Min-jae, promising never to reveal the truth to him. "After my accident, I suffered lasting complications. My life is nearing its end. Please let me spend these final moments with him." Meanwhile, In-kong returned to the hometown he'd lived in for 10 years. He wanted to secretly see Son-soo. Son-soo suddenly sensed something and spotted In-kong at once. Seeing this, In-kong panicked and fled. Son-soo hurried after him, but In-kong vanished without a trace. The next day, Son-soo still found In-kong alone and heartbroken by the seaside. This time, In-kong didn't hide but revealed herself to Son-soo. In-kong said, "I already know you're not my biological mother. I came to find you this time to ask about my real parents." Son-soo recalled what Yura had once told her and didn't reveal the truth to In-kong. Meanwhile, In-soo was preparing for surgery due to after effects from the car accident. Unexpectedly, Yura bought a hat and gloated, telling In-soo, "You look most beautiful wearing this hat now." Yura confessed to having hit her with a car years ago, "Because I couldn't let you take Min-jae away and make me lose my status as a wealthy family's daughter-in-law." Faced with Yura's taunts, In-soo could only feel helpless. Yura believed that after In-soo's death, no one could ever take Min-jae away from her. What she didn't anticipate was that her father-in-law had long known Min-jae wasn't his biological son, yet he didn't blame her. Instead, he thanked Yura for saving Young Min's child back then. He instructed Yura not to tell Min-jae about this. Otherwise, Young Min would lose his eligibility to compete for the inheritance. Yet when Min-jae visited In-soo in the hospital, he discovered she was his biological mother. He struggled to accept this truth. He feared he'd never get the chance to call In-soo mom. Min-jae stayed by In-soo's side. After her surgery, In-soo finally regained consciousness through sheer willpower. Min-jae exclaimed emotionally, "I know you're my mother." In-soo begged Min-jae not to hate her. Suddenly, her condition deteriorated, and she passed away. In-kong knelt beside Min-jae throughout the entire funeral night. Yura was deeply displeased by this. She believed In-kong was a treacherous woman. Throughout the funeral arrangements, Min-jae didn't utter a single word to Yura. In the end, he even carried his mother's ashes and drove directly to the burial site with In-kong. Yura was furious, wondering how Min-jae could treat her this way. After returning home, Yura ordered her subordinates to dig up every bit of In-kang's dark past. This time, she was determined to destroy In-kong completely. Later, Yura confided her anguish to her sister. She revealed the truth about In-kong and Min-jae. Son-soo found it unbearable to hear. She had always believed Min-jae was Yura's biological son, and In-kong was Yura's biological daughter. Seeing Yura plot against In-kong, Son-soo desperately wanted to tell Yura the truth, but didn't know how to broach the subject. She hurriedly sought out In-kong and demanded to know her relationship with Min-jae. In-kong stated they were currently dating. Faced with this, Son-soo had no choice but to reveal that In-kong was Yura's biological daughter. In-kong was utterly incredulous. Fortunately, Min-jae wasn't Yura's biological son. Meanwhile, Yura finally uncovered In-kang's dark past. She immediately called to arrange a meeting with In-kong. At this meeting, In-kong shed her former assertiveness and instead praised Yura as a deeply maternal person who would protect a son not biologically hers at any cost. Though flattered by In-kang's praise, Yura remained focused on her purpose. She produced the CD containing In-kang's incriminating evidence. She threatened In-kong that if he continued to harass Min-jae, she would expose everything. In-kong showed no fear, but as Yura was leaving, In-kong agreed to never see Min-jae again. The moment Yura returned to the company, her sister, who had been waiting, called her over. Son-soo intended to reveal that In-kong was her daughter, but she couldn't find the words to say it. This made Yura find her sister extremely irritating. In-kan, filled with doubts, sought out Sansu again. She demanded to know why Yura had abandoned her all those years ago. Sansu didn't want to tell In-kan the truth. She said, "I lied to your mother back then, telling her you were dead. Because at that time, your mother didn't have the means to raise you, so all of this is my fault." But In-kan refused to believe it. Moreover, she couldn't continue dating Min-jae now, because Min-jae was her brother. She then confronted Min-jae to end their relationship, and falsely claimed she had only been using him. She even humiliated Min-jae. After saying this, In-kan left with tears streaming down her face. Upon learning of their breakup, Yura, to eliminate future threats, resolved to destroy In-kan, so she had someone expose all of In-kang's past scandals. Soon, In-kang's negative news flooded the internet, plunging her career and life into endless torment. Min-jae also saw the negative reports about In-kan. He rushed to find her regardless of the consequences. For In-kang's sake, Min-jae made a major decision on his own. He stood before reporters and announced they would marry next year. In-kan was deeply moved by Min-jae's gesture. The next day, Yura saw the news and was utterly shocked. She believed this was In-kang's retaliation against her. Sansu, upon seeing the news, rushed to find Yura. She told Yura, "In-kan is your daughter." Yura immediately pressed her sister. "Did you tell In-kan I'm her biological mother?" Sansu nodded. Yura blamed her sister. "Why did you lie back then? Why say the child was dead?" Sansu could only cry helplessly. Yura also wept helplessly, at a loss. Later, she sought out In-kan herself, but she didn't come to acknowledge their relationship, but to beg her not to reveal the truth to Min-jae. Watching Yura prepare to leave, In-kan bluntly declared she wouldn't let this go. Yet Yura insisted she had no regrets about abandoning her back then. She then blamed her sister for not telling her the truth sooner. She demanded her sister pretend ignorance if reporters questioned her. If In-kang's identity were exposed, she would surely be driven out by her in-laws. Yura then sought out Toksun to inform him that In-kan was still alive. Fearing this would disrupt his life, Toksun urged Yura not to expose the truth. Outraged by Toksun's irresponsible attitude, Yura produced a miniature surveillance camera, demanding he use it to spy on Eri and find evidence against her. Toksun was reluctant. Yura then threatened to expose his own daughter's secrets. Toksun had no choice but to agree. Toksun placed the camera in Eri's bedroom. Worried In-kan might reveal the truth, Yura sought her out again. She warned, "If you expose this, Min-jae won't survive the shock." In-kan understood this was a threat, but she wasn't so easily fooled. The next day, In-kan held her press conference, as scheduled. Yura waited anxiously at the company for the final outcome. In front of reporters, In-kan recounted her journey so far. She mentioned finding her biological mother, but didn't reveal who she was. Instead, she used the topic to play the victim, even facing the camera with tears. Claiming she understood her mother's hardships, In-kang's actions quickly garnered sympathy online. Yeon-min and his son Min-jae both accidentally learned they weren't biologically related. Neither could accept it. Min-jae knew if grandfather discovered this secret, he'd surely expel both him and Yura from the family. Moreover, Yeon-min's dream of becoming heir would shatter. Min-jae told Yeon-min, "As long as you keep this secret, I won't reveal it either." Meanwhile, Yura, still unable to locate Min-jae, went straight to In-kang's house to search. She again emphasized to In-kang, "You must never tell Min-jae the truth that I'm your daughter. Otherwise, he'll be ruined." In-kang felt deeply conflicted. She urged Yura to leave immediately. Realizing her mistake, Yura hastily apologized to In-kang. Seeing this, In-kang immediately exposed Yura's true intentions. Yura pleaded with In-kang to stop seeing Min-jae, but In-kang firmly refused. Then, in anguish, she locked the door and wept bitterly. Worried she had upset In-kang, Yura kept apologizing. Seeing In-kang unmoved, before leaving, Yura hurled vicious curses at In-kang once more. Min-jae drank with his uncle Yeon-tae. Troubled by his father's conflict with In-kang, Yeon-tae deliberately suggested Min-jae secretly marry In-kang. Min-jae found this a sound plan. He tracked down In-kang and led her deep into a forest. There, he produced a wedding ring and proposed to her. In-kang accepted joyfully. The two had now completely cast aside society's prejudices. Meanwhile, Yeon-min, filled with trepidation, underwent a paternity test with Min-jae. Later, Yura discovered In-kang and Min-jae had secretly married. The two erupted into a furious fight. In-kang declared she would never part from Min-jae. To make In-kang leave Min-jae, Yura promised to spend a fortune sending her abroad to become an international superstar. This seemed like a win-win solution for Yura. In-kang, touched by Yura's maternal affection, readily agreed, though what followed was something Yura never could have anticipated. That day, Yura received a bombshell from her second sister-in-law. Eri revealed that Yura's father-in-law likely knew all along about her illegitimate daughter. He had merely been using her to raise Min-jae. Now he intends to take Min-jae away from you, and you're about to be kicked out of this household. Yura couldn't help but feel terrified. She went to her sister to pour out her anguish. Sure enough, soon after, Taejin found Yura and ordered her to leave Min-jae. To ensure Min-jae could truly become the group's master, he demanded Yura never see Min-jae again. Yura was ultimately cast aside, but how could she possibly accept this abandonment willingly. Yura confided in Young Min about the situation. She believed her father-in-law was doing this to isolate Young Min. She urged Young Min to investigate her father-in-law's will. Yet Young Min was preoccupied with doubts about his biological relationship with Min-jae. Young Min then sought Min-jae's paternity test results. The doctor confirmed their biological father-son relationship. Unbeknownst to him, Young Min hadn't submitted his own sample for the test. Confronted with this outcome, he immediately concluded Min-jae wasn't his biological son. To prevent his family from being cast out by the clan, Young Min deceived Min-jae, claiming he was his biological son. He also urged Yura to keep the secret. To hasten Min-jae's succession as heir, Yura proactively approached her father-in-law, expressing her willingness to leave. She then revealed to him that In-kan was her biological daughter. Taejin was furious. He would never permit Min-jae to marry In-kan. Young Min's younger brother, Yun-tae, vied for the heir position. He paid a high price to obtain Min-jae's genuine paternity test report. He immediately informed his father of this. Taejin was furious upon learning Young Min had secretly arranged the paternity test with Min-jae. Yet he remained convinced Min-jae was his own grandson. He warned Young Min not to engage in pointless actions that would harm Min-jae. Young Min was furious that Yun-tae had told their father to frame him. Yun-tae angrily handed the test report to Min-jae. Min-jae was stunned upon seeing the paternity results. He found In-kan and told her the news. Then he prepared to say goodbye to her. Upon learning Min-jae knew the results, Yura no longer tried to stop them. She confessed to Young Min that In-kan was her daughter. She also offered Young Min a sincere apology. Meanwhile, Taejin tracked down the doctor who had performed Young Min's paternity test. The doctor revealed the test had actually shown no biological relationship, but I simply couldn't bring myself to tell Young Min the truth, he confessed. Instead of reprimanding the doctor, Taejin praised him for his discretion and requested he keep the secret. The doctor found the chairman's behavior peculiar. In truth, Taejin had long confirmed Min-jae was Young Min's biological son. Meanwhile, In-kan urged Min-jae to request another paternity test with Young Min. She feared someone might be deceiving Min-jae. Later, In-kan approached Young Min demanding the test report and brought along the previous report Yun-tae had given Min-jae. She urged Young Min to verify if this report was genuine, but Young Min knew it was real. He had secretly arranged for the doctor to conduct the test himself. Yura looked at the results and said, "It shows you are not biologically related." Young Min abruptly stood up, snatching the report from her. Yura finally realized Min-jae must be Young Min's biological son, because the sample Young Min submitted for testing wasn't his own. It was the sample from the man suspected of being Min-jae's real father. If that's the case, Young Min is Min-jae's true father. Min-jae had never understood why his entire family fiercely opposed his marriage to In-kan. Until this day, when Yun-tae revealed the truth to him, it turned out In-kan was Yura's biological daughter, his own sister. Min-jae, tormented, sought Yura out for confirmation. Faced with his anguish, Yura had no choice but to admit In-kan was her daughter. Min-jae blamed Yura for hiding this truth from him. Yura told Min-jae that since he and In-kan shared no blood relation, they could continue their relationship normally. But Min-jae couldn't forgive her. Though they shared no blood ties, Min-jae couldn't overcome the emotional barrier. To people who truly loved each other couldn't break through society's conventions to continue their path. Meanwhile, Taejin seized all of Yura's assets, shattering her plans to send In-kan abroad for further education. Yura told In-kan she would fulfill her promise. In-kan declares he needs nothing else. "As long as you're by my side, Mother, I'm content." Yura finds deep comfort in his words. It turns out her father had made a final request to Yura on his deathbed. All these years, Yura spared no expense to secure Min-jae's position as chairman. She vividly remembers watching her heartbroken mother take her own life as a child. And all this tragedy stemmed from Taejin. That day, Yura finally confronted Taejin, revealing the secret she'd suppressed for 40 years. "To seize my father's patents, you sacrificed your first love in a deal with him. My father paid for that love with his life, plunging into utter poverty. After each of your visits to my mother, father would drown his sorrows in alcohol and beat her, calling her a filthy woman." Yura was about to continue, but Taejin could bear no more. He knelt on the ground, apologizing to Yura's parents. Yura declared she would never forgive him. "I remember clearly, when I was 4, you came looking for my mother. Only my father covering my eyes saved my childhood. Much later, I learned Dad had been living in hell all along." Hearing this, Taejin could no longer control his emotions. He immediately fainted. Yura didn't spare Taejin. After he was revived, she forced him to write Young Min's name in the will. Only then could he repay the debt he owed. Taejin, just regaining consciousness, couldn't withstand the shock and fainted again. The next day, the entire family gathered at the villa upon hearing Taejin was near death. The lawyer announced the chairman's will would soon be made public. Yet when Young Min read the will, he declared his second brother as the heir. Later, as Young Min burned the will, Yura witnessed it. Ra knew the will must have named Yeonmin. She confronted Yeonmin, demanding why he did this. Yeonmin replied, I did it all to keep you from leaving me, though you all lost everything. In the end, she found true love. In Kong finally bid farewell to Minjae, and embarked on his journey abroad for further studies. All this was quietly facilitated by In Kang's biological father, Toksum. To film ends here. Interested viewers, feel free to like and follow. See you next time.